Good Saturday morning, James Brierton from the Carolina Weather Group with you. It is September 9th, 2017, at about 11:20 a.m. Eastern Time. We are looking at the 11 a.m. update from the National Hurricane Center. We are watching Hurricane Irma really closely. It is now technically a Category 3 storm. As I put the radar back up on the screen for you, I'm sorry, this is satellite. As I put the satellite back up on the screen for you, you can see that Irma is still interacting with the northern shore of Cuba. And as you look at this radar loop here over the course of the last few hours, you can see that the storm has weakened a bit, and you can see that especially on the southern portion of your screen, where we're seeing a little less in terms of the yellows and the oranges and the reds. That is certainly good news. We will take any sort of friction, any sort of breakdown we can. This is still a major hurricane by all means, with the maximum sustained winds of 125 miles per hour. And so we are still talking about catastrophic, devastating damage here for lots of folks who are in the direct path of the storm. And our thoughts are with the folks of the Cuban island at this hour. Let's look, though, at what the storm is going to be doing over the course of the next few hours. This, again, is the 11 a.m. Eastern update here on this Saturday for Hurricane Irma, who is a Category 3 major hurricane. We did see that breakdown of the storm a little bit from about 12 hours ago when it left those wide open waters to the north of Cuba and now has been interacting with that friction. However, you will notice here in this forecast track that the storm will start to turn north sometime soon, and when it does that, it will be back out over open waters, and that's exactly what it needs to strengthen. So we are all keeping a very close eye on these satellite pictures and watching that eye, that dot in the middle of your screen as the satellite here reloads for us and gets us some fresh data. We're going to watch to see exactly when that turns north, because that will let us know exactly where we can expect this landfall, because when you look at the forecast cone, it still has a little bit of a margin of error. But what I really want to drill down for you is, although we have a little bit of margin of error and we're talking about whether or not we're going to see this landfall at the very tip of the Keys or closer to the mainland of Florida, the space there in that cone, as we are now 24 hours out, is very small, because this hurricane is hundreds of miles wide, and you can see in this picture that the outer bands of the storm are already beginning to interact with southern Florida, with the Keys. And as I go ahead and I put the National Weather Service radar out of Key West, Florida up on your screen, bear with me for just a second. I didn't realize we didn't have it ready to go, and I do apologize for that, but we will have it up on your screen here in just a matter of moments. Here it is. This is the radar. So now we are getting ground truth. That satellite coming from a bird in the sky up in space looking down. Now we are beaming out radar from the ground from Key West, Florida, looking out. So we're getting a higher resolution, more ground truth, and you can already see that despite an eye that remains off the northern coast of Cuba, we're seeing those outer bands of rain now interacting with southern Florida, and that's what we began to see late last night as well, too. Matter of fact, we have a picture right now. This is a traffic camera out of Miami. This is Interstate 95, and in the words of a Facebook friend of mine who lives in Miami and is there working this storm for the media, he says, it is a ghost town. And I think this traffic image from Interstate 95 shows just that. But that's what we want to be seeing. We want to be seeing folks that have evacuated. We want to be seeing folks and places right now that are empty, because we still have a very significant storm that is going to be making its way into Florida here in the course of the next 24 hours. Let me go ahead and put the forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center back up on your screen, because I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the colors that we have outlining the shorelines. Those areas in red, that pretty much encompasses all of Florida. We're talking Panhandle, Jacksonville South. That is a hurricane warning. You have a hurricane that will be approaching you, if it hasn't already, in the course of the next several hours. You can see that by 8 p.m. on Sunday, the best projection is that this storm, as a Category 3, 4 major hurricane, will be making landfall somewhere in that greater Tampa area, and it is likely going to be in that general vicinity. So we are watching here for that turn, for that northern turn, because when we see that turn, we'll be able to get an idea of exactly where that eye may be making that landfall. But, I know we all want to know exactly where the storm's going to go ashore, but when we look at the forecast cone, we're talking about the eye. Where is the eye going to be? But again, look at this satellite picture. We're talking about an eye right now that is flirting with landfall in Cuba. and we have tropical storm force rain and wind in Miami. So you don't need to be exactly where that eye is to feel the extent of this storm. And I want to drive that point home, especially as we take a look at this picture. This is a traffic camera just north of Tampa, and as we begin to see more and more confidence in this forecast that the hurricane here is going to flirt with the west coast of Florida, folks in Tampa, new evacuation orders for folks living along the coast there, heading north here on Interstate 75. We do also have a new graphic that came in this morning from the National Weather Service office that is in charge of precipitation forecast, and it really, I think, drives home. And let me see if I can adjust this on your screen here a little bit so we can get it just past that lower third for you. This is over the course of the next 24, 48, 72 hours, and I think drives the point home that we are talking about a major event for Florida, but we're also still talking about a rainmaker, a windmaker for portions of the southeast, including Georgia, South Carolina, and even parts of western North Carolina, such as the foothills, Charlotte, Asheville, etc., because what we were looking at here on the screen is the amount of precipitation in inches that could be anticipated. And when you see areas in yellow, we are talking about almost an inch of rain in the course of a 6-hour period. So altogether, we could see maybe 2, 3, 4 areas or inches of rain in areas of the Charlotte metro region, a few locally higher as well too. So the further south you are, the closer you are to the eye of the hurricane, the more rain you will likely see with the stronger winds, and you can really see that just coming up here in a frame or two as the bulk, the center of that circulation makes its way into Georgia and flirts with that South Carolina line. But what that really means for all of us from Florida into Georgia, North Carolina, and South Carolina is we're watching very closely for power outages. This is an experimental graphic that I'm showing you right now. It comes from the Ohio State University, Texas A&M University, and University of Michigan cooperation. They are attempting to forecast power outages as a way to show you the extent of this storm on life quality and what we can expect not only during the storm but after the storm. Their latest prediction has about 2.6 million power customers in the southeast without power, and remind you that these power outages will last for more than just hours or days. We could be talking a week or more in order to get places in Florida back up and running, and you can see some of those power outages even extend as far north into Georgia. The really good news here as we look at this is that their latest projections really do kind of clamp down on the power outages projections for the Carolinas. And I think that is good news for folks in the Carolinas. As I go ahead and I pop up on the screen, I want to show you one particular computer model. We have a lot of computer models, and the computers can give us a visual representation of where they think this storm's going to go. What I really want to let you know is that when we show you a computer model, it is a forecast driven by data put out by a computer. There is no human interpretation of that until we see that forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center, or until you see your local meteorologist on television talking about it. And I want to really make that clear to folks, the difference between what a computer thinks and what a human thinks. We have some really great technology out there, but nothing beats a human eye. So what I'm showing you here in just a moment, this is a computer interpretation of what the storm is going to be doing over the course of the next few hours. This is from the GFS. It came in several hours ago. It is still fairly timely and fairly accurate, but is just one of several interpretations. You can see that in the first frame here, we do have Hurricane Irma. That is the L that says 935 just at the bottom of the screen there. I'll circle it with my mouse over the island of Cuba, and as I put this into motion over the course of the next few hours, you can see it will still move to the west, but begin to turn north, begin to interact with the Keys where they have been evacuated. I'm trying to progress this to the next frame here, but I think what has happened since I first started talking to you is we actually started getting in new data. And so what happens is when a new model run comes in, I start getting it picture by picture by picture by picture. Right now we have a whopping 2. So what I want to do is I'm going to walk this back to that model run that I thought I was looking at from several hours ago, because I just really want to get you an idea of where this storm is going to be going after it leaves Florida, especially for folks who are watching the Carolina Weather Group live stream here from portions in North and South Carolina. So here we go again. We have the storm over Cuba, and over the course of the next few hours, we're going to watch for it to turn north and west over the Keys, over Fort Myers, southern Florida. This particular run has it interacting with land right there. I wouldn't be surprised as we get this new data in if the eye was just a little bit further to the west. But again, we're just splitting hairs at this point. And it's going to come up, flirt with that west coast of Florida, and then come into portions of central Georgia. But look at the outer reaches of that storm. I'm going to see if I can zoom this in here for you a little bit, because what I really want to be showing you is that even if we're talking about a low, the center of the storm over Georgia, we're still seeing very strong rain, very strong wind back over portions of the Carolinas. And so that's why, even though we may not be talking about a major hurricane for us here in the Carolinas, we could still be talking about wind and rain and power outages. And let's not forget that if you are in that northeast quadrant, that top right, when you're looking at this hurricane on a map, that is where most likely we will see some tornadic spin-ups. It all has to do with the setup of the storm. So we will need to remind everybody, we kind of know where the hurricane's going. We know where the wind and the rain are going to be and be prolonged, but we don't know where those quick, isolated spin-ups are going to be. So please, as you get your storm supplies all set, and I really hope by this point you have them, have that battery-operated weather radio that can alert you when the power's out, when the cell phones are down. You'll know if there is a tornadic spin-up, a tornado warning issued for your area. The other thing I want to show you here as I bring up the GFS model one more time is look at this right here for a moment with me. You see an L that represents the center of Hurricane Irma, just over the Georgia-Florida line there. This is about Monday morning or so. Notice a couple things. We have a bunch of those isobars, those are those black lines really close together. That represents windy conditions. The other thing we've got here is we've got a low that is on the land, but really close to water. And so if you are living along the shore, places like Savannah, Georgia, Charleston, South Carolina, we are still anticipating quite the storm surge for you, because you're going to have this onslaught of rain and wind that is just going to be pushing this wall of water onshore for you. And so that's why, even though we're no longer expecting to see a major hurricane in the Carolinas, the governor of South Carolina yesterday did announce some evacuations for coastal islands, barrier islands in South Carolina, because it doesn't take a whole lot for those to flood. If you've been there, if you've traveled there, you know just how close they are to the water, how low-lying, and so we are anticipating quite a bit of storm surge, even along portions of South Carolina and Georgia. But again, I want to drive home that it is really going to be something to see, a sight to see, the amount of storm surge that is anticipated along Florida with this storm. Matter of fact, the National Hurricane Center has a new experimental model that I can show you, and I'm going to pull it up real fast because I didn't have it pulled up ready to go. But it projects storm surge in the matter of feet. And so one of the things that I think we all fear the most right now is this storm surge in places like Key West, where the National Hurricane Center office there yesterday tweeted in the most plain language I have ever seen, "Get out." And I really hope that people have. And you know, although I haven't looked at traffic cameras in Key West, if the traffic camera we saw in Miami is any indication, hopefully people have done that. This is the storm surge map from the National Hurricane Center. We are looking at the southern tip of the mainland of Florida. We have Miami here just off to your right. We have Fort Myers here up in the top left. We've got the Everglades down here. These colors represent projected storm surge in feet. And that red means that water is projected to be at least 9 feet or more above the ground. That orange is 6 feet above the ground. We all know what 6 feet looks like. That is like an adult human being of water. And I think Scotty Powell last night in our special at 11 o'clock Eastern time last night here in the Carolina Weather Group said it best. You go through those drive-thrus at the bank, at the fast food restaurant. You see that overhead clearance sign, vehicles no higher than 8 feet. That is the amount of storm surge we're expecting to see along the coast, but also in these inlets here. If you know anybody who lives in one of these inlets, these waterways in Florida, we're going to be watching those very closely because the water is going to be taking every path it can get as it tries to come ashore. So once again, as we come up about the 11:30 time here on this Saturday morning, James Brierton with you on the Carolina Weather Group. We do have that 11 o'clock advisory in from the National Hurricane Center related to Hurricane Irma, who at this hour is a Category 3 storm just north of the island of Cuba, and it's expected to intensify back into at least a Category 4 storm once it leaves Cuba, goes back over open waters near Key West, Florida, and the course of the next 24 hours or so begins to interact with and make a possible landfall there along the west coast of Florida, possibly in the Tampa, Sarasota, or Fort Myers area. A couple other graphics I didn't show you. This is, again, some rainfall projections. You can see portions of southern Florida in for about 15 inches of rain at least. And the other thing we'll be watching for is the outer reaches of the wind. Tropical storm force winds here expected to already be in southern Florida, portions of northern Florida here by the tomorrow, and then even into portions of the southeast as we look ahead to the start of the work week on Monday. Before we sign off, I do want to take a quick moment to go ahead and look at some of your questions and comments that may be coming in as you were watching me this morning on the Carolina Facebook group, Facebook Live, and on YouTube and Periscope. So thank you to everyone who is watching there. I'm also being told in my ear right now that the governor of the governor of North Carolina, this is Roy Cooper, is holding a press conference right now to talk about storm preparations in this neck of the woods. So we're going to take you to that news conference here in just a moment, so you can learn a little bit more about what North Carolina is doing to prepare for this storm. So bear with us. We're going to go ahead and pop it up. It began just a matter of a few moments ago, and we will stream that here in its entirety for you on the Carolina Weather Group Facebook page. And I'll also let you know before I sign off and pass it on over here to this news conference that we will be getting an update from the National Hurricane Center again at about 2 p.m. Eastern Time, just to update the position of the storm and its wind strengths. And then we will get another update that will might make some slight modifications to the forecast cone at about 5 p.m. This afternoon. But again, we're really getting in here to the very end of the storm, the short-term window here, and we know that this is making a beeline for western Florida. Here is the governor of North Carolina.
Good, and thank you for what the Department of Transportation is doing to get ready for this storm. I know people may be concerned about fuel supplies. We continue to see fuel flowing through stations across victims. Some of these scams distribute malware which can affect your computer. I know we want to help and we should help, but don't respond to unsolicited emails and texts or click on links in them. It is best for you to give through reputable charities that you contact directly. And I'm going to repeat one more time, want families and businesses to get ready. That means having your evacuation plan ready. It means preparing your emergency supply kit. And it means staying informed of the current weather forecast. And you can go to ready.
As you can see, we are having a little bit of a difficulty with this North Carolina emergency management update with the governor. trying to bring it to you in the best we can, but the signal being provided to us doesn't seem to want to play out in its entirety, and so I do apologize for that. And it seems like that may be wrapping up. It does seem like the gist of the governor's message there this morning, as we were looking at a forecast track that more intensely, of course, focuses on Florida, but also Georgia, and a little less on the impacts of North Carolina, especially if you're in eastern or central North Carolina. We're talking about some effects here that will really be felt in the western part of the state. The governor's message is just to stay vigilant and watch out for those scams, and don't fall out for any of those scams, whether you're trying to help your neighbors here in the Carolinas, help your friends and family down in Florida, and let's not forget about the folks still trying to clean up after Hurricane Harvey in Texas. So thank you for following us here on the Carolina Weather Group with us here on this Saturday morning. We will continue to monitor the storm and bring you updates throughout the weekend. Stay safe, and please stay weather aware.